this is like hip hop heaven right now to have a song. J. Cole, Drake, Coleman absolutely killed it. Our brother.
That was one of our first reactions to Drake's new studio album, For All the Dogs. If you guys want to check out the full live album reaction, check the pinned comment and check our description for our Patreon link. But listen, we were expecting a drop at 12 a.m. Eastern time yesterday night. We were in the middle of our pre-album stream, and Drake said that it was going to be dropping at 6 a.m. this morning. So it was the first time ever we reacted to an album in the morning time.
In the morning time, yeah. We were super hyped for this, especially after hearing 8 a.m. in Charlotte, another classic timestamp song from Drake. And I'll be honest with you, I think when it comes to Drake, he has one of the best legacies in hip-hop history. He has multiple classics in his discography, and we have to hold Drake to a certain standard at the end of the day because he is one of the greatest rappers still rapping today. And this album just simply doesn't reflect that off of first listen. It was really subpar for Drake standards. And I'm really stunned that we got a 23-song album and that, obviously it's not a cohesive album, but it's also a poorly curated playlist. That's what's shocking to me.
It is, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't mind the long runtime on Drake albums because when you go back to studio albums like Scorpion or even Views, for example, there is a bit of a longer runtime on there. So I've enjoyed those album experiences. I've been locked in and immersed. But when you're locked into an hour and 24-minute experience like you are throughout this studio album, I feel like there's not much going for it, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, after my first listen. This just may be my opinion. I know a lot of you guys like it out there, but from a Drake fan that's been following his career for the better part of 13 years now, I do feel like this is one of his weakest efforts after first listen.
Yeah.
And I knew off the bat what type of album we were going to be getting once you go in through Virginia Beach. Then you get Amen. Then you get Calling for You, Fear of Heights, Daylight. Like, all of these songs, they're not necessarily bad quality, even if there was some curation choices that are questionable. It's just that they're so subpar to the point to where you start off the album on kind of a sleepy and slumpy note, and then, I don't know, it kind of disengages you from the track list.
It really does. And that whole idea of us getting the old Drake back for this album didn't really translate. I didn't get that feeling of Take Care Drake. Nothing was the same Drake, where you had substance, where you had introspective tracks. And even just in terms of the soundscape, you didn't really get too many moody, atmospheric songs that we came to expect from Drake over time. It seemed like, if anything, this is newer Drake. This is Benny X production, a lot of synth horns, a lot of distorted bass, especially looking at songs like I Don't Give a Fuck with Yeet, where even a track like that, production-wise, Yeet sounded much better over the beat and probably had the better performance as well. I feel like he sounded more lively, and that was another issue that I have with the project as a whole, is that, similar to how I felt about Certified Lover Boy, you didn't really get the most passionate Drake performances. A lot of these tracks, the melodies aren't really that catchy. You don't have the most memorable hooks. You don't have Drake really extending his vocals or putting in that much of an effort, it feels like. But let's talk about some highlights on you. I want to know about some of your standouts. For me, of course, 8 a.m. in Charlotte is an incredible track, probably the best song on here. And that's what sucks for me as a listener going into this album, is that I expected Drake to rap on this album, and I feel like he didn't rap enough, at least for what I was expecting.
Yeah, or if he did go into his rapping bag, the problem is that the content was very subpar, and it was just kind of like, I wouldn't say annoying, but I just get into the writing and I'm like, well, a lot of these bars either seem forced or they don't seem well calculated for what's going on. And that was kind of odd to me because Yachty had spoken about the writing of the album before this had dropped and said that this was going to be one of the clearest Drake albums, saying that
some of his best verses ever.
Yeah, best verses ever. And I mean, yes, maybe you get that on 8 a.m. in Charlotte, and that's pretty much it, if I'm being completely honest with you.
We do have to talk about first-person shooter with J. Cole, because for the first time in 10 fucking years, we got a J. Cole and Drake song. This was definitely a highlight for me. I think that the production was the darkest on here. Coleman, Boy Wonder, they did their thing with the strings, with the drum programming. It was just a fucking big hit for me. One of my favorites off here. J. Cole,
best feature on the entire album.
Absolutely killed it.
I will say this too, Party Next Door, a members only. That was another highlight for me on the album. I feel like P&D brought a great amount of energy into there. It was interesting to see the six link up once again. Not only that, but I do feel like once P&D did deliver his verse, then Drake picked up on that energy and kind of carried back in for the outro of the track. But the way that Drake started off members only, it was kind of a bit shaky, to be quite honest with you. The whole gangy thing. It's just not for me. Let's talk about Tizo Touchdown. Congratulations to Tizo. He's having an incredible year. He did fantastic on Amen. I loved his vocals. I love the way that they were layered. I feel like they added a lot to the track. But then again, I just feel like the curation choices for, like, let's say having Drake's verse match that type of performance, it just didn't make sense for the track,
But
in my opinion.
it was very refreshing to hear Drake tackle sort of this gospel choir-esque type of sound sonically. That was sort of new. So it was cool to see him take on a new challenge with that track. Something else that I want to talk about is Calling For You with 21 Savage. That wouldn't even have, it sounds like a leftover from Her Loss. It doesn't really hold a candle to any tracks off of that album for me. Daylight was a highlight for me. I definitely appreciated that. You ended up getting Adonis on the back end of that, throwing in a verse, and that was pretty interesting to see.
I would say I would have liked to see him actually rap over that beat. It was crazy.
That second beat, yeah.
That second beat was fantastic. But then again, shout out to Adonis. He's actually had a big part to play in the
even like
album.
Drake's cadence was more interesting than the rest of the tracks on here for the most part, just because he goes back into that meltdown mode where he sounds more menacing. He sounds more vicious to a certain degree. So I enjoyed that aspect of him just making an effort to change up his vocal tone.
I will say that, yes, it was interesting to see it, but I just think that the execution was kind of misplaced, in my opinion.
That was a good cut.
For which one?
For Daylight.
Yes, that was a good cut, but I think a curation choice on this album that really shouldn't have been a thing was Sexy Red on Rich Baby Daddy. Listen, SZA's vocals are absolutely fantastic. She sounded incredible on this track, and I understand Sexy Red is having a great year. She's doing a lot of things for herself, and she's popping off. If you wanted to have that Sexy Red track, maybe do it as a solo cut rather than have her on the same track as SZA, because I feel like it just takes away from the track, even like the content matter of it. Like, I get it, it's the whole vibe, it's very raunchy, like that's her sort of thing, and I understand why people like it. The only problem is that once you get those beautiful SZA vocals, it's like, well, fuck, like, where does this really mix in together? And then you just get these random Drake verses.
Yeah, and something else that was cool was that the interludes were pretty enjoyable for me. Going back to Screw the World interlude, you had the DJ Screw version of If I Ruled the World by Nas and Lauryn Hill, and you had that dirty mix that was just classic DJ Screw. And that was a moment where I'm like, fuck, this could be one of those times where Drake raps over an old Drake type of aesthetic, and he chose to sort of leave it as an instrumental.
I would have loved to see that. Yeah,
would have
absolutely.
been great
that would have
to
been
hear
incredible.
him rap over that. Also, BBL Love interlude was hilarious. I mean, I feel like
cool.
Drake was just fucking around with that track.
But that's acceptable, yeah, because you knew that like it was more of like in comedic light, so I was okay with it. And honestly,
great sample flip, too.
Yeah, the production was hard. I feel like that was actually pretty good. Let's talk about all the parties with Chief Keef. I mean, I wish Chief Keef had a longer portion to the song, but even at that, like, I don't find he fit like the vibe of the album, to be quite honest with you. I don't even know where that feature came out of, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I guess it was a bit random, but he still had a pretty chill performance. Let's talk about Away From Home, the 22nd track on here. I guess one of the standouts, at least in terms of if you want substance from Drake, this is one of the songs to go to. He's talking his shit. He's rapping about his come up. He's rapping about how he's the true CEO of Universal Records. He's rapping about how making a Michelle Obama playlist doesn't mean much these days. My only thing is that, like, even at an example like that, where you're getting good penmanship from Drake, the flow doesn't change that much. There's not that much liveliness to the performance. The production is so minimalistic and sparse and bare bones, where you're getting these cheap snares and some piano chords that don't really add any life. It sounds like a dry desert musically.
But the thing is that that's actually a track that I want to revisit, just because I really enjoyed the writing of it, and especially with the whole I Remember thing and kind of like progressing through his come up. Like, that's the Drake I love, and I'm happy that he was able to give us that. I wish maybe it was executed a bit better on the production wise.
Yeah. How did you feel about the intro, Virginia Beach? You had the Frank Ocean sample going on there.
It was cool. I mean, it's nothing too crazy. I can understand why people are going to jam it and why people are going to absolutely love it. But if you have to ask me, just to kind of play like devil's advocate, I mean, you put this up against a lot of other Drake intros, and I do feel like it's one of the weakest intros on a Drake album, if I'm being completely honest with you. I have to call a spade, to be honest with you. And not only that, but then once you get into Polar Opposites, that's another weak outro. So not only that, but once you get into the studio album experience, the intro and the outro don't hold up to par with the rest of the track list.
They don't. And to be honest with you, just this whole experience as a whole, you had a lot of songs, a lot of R&B cuts that seemed to drag. And the only real connective tissue this album seems to have is like some dog barks or mentions of dogs.
Well, I think that was
And,
cool,
like,
seeing like
that's
Sade
what-
and
but-
seeing Snoop Dogg,
yeah,
let's
like,
say, get on with the
like
Bark
I
Radio
said,
thing.
that was the only effort that was put into making this feel like a collective body of work. Because apart from that, sonically, lyrically, style-wise, nothing really feels glued together. And I get that. That's what Drake is known for giving you a collection of a variety of styles. And he does obviously always excel at that. But when it came to this album, it's just another case where Drake's not rapping at a high level for the most part. The R&B tracks, again, are not all that impressive. And even the newer, like, trap, rage, Benny X, opium type of sounding tracks just don't hit for me, man.
They don't hit for me, if I'm being honest.
How
with
many
you.
songs do you think you're taking away from this? Like, I know it's only the first listen, but as of now.
If I speak, I'm in big trouble. As
The Jose Mourinho line?
As Jose Mourinho.
How many
would say.
tracks would you say?
Honestly, man, I'm gonna redo like I have to, because I have to listen to the album the whole weekend. We have the review to put out. We have content to be putting out on it. So I'm obviously giving this album full listens. You know, it's Drake. I'm gonna be doing it through. But honestly, what I'm adding to my rotation off the bat, I mean, 8 a.m. in Charlotte's an absolute lock. I'm even on the fence about first person shooter.
Oh,
to
come
be
on. You
honest with
can't
you.
be on the fence about that
I'm
song.
a bit on the fence. Listen, I think it's fire. I think it's cool.
banger.
Because the J. Cole performance was absolutely crazy. It's just that I just don't think that
Be
like,
the
Drake
big three like
performance
we
wasn't-
started a league? Come on, bro.
Yes, I understand. Like, I'm gonna go
Even
back.
Drake had bars on there.
He did, but I think that when I look at the collaboration, I'm kind of past like the whole fact that J. Cole and Drake are on the same song again. Like, I think it's a super cool moment. I think it's great for both of their careers. I love what it means for hip hop, and I love what it is. But for my rotation,
So only one song staying. Wow.
I guess that's harsh to say, but I'm gonna go back in the track list. That's why I'm gonna reserve that for maybe the review.
For myself,
once we do the replay
yeah,
value.
I could see myself going into Daylight again. I would say we also have What Would Pluto Do, where you have like the baby girl, the dynasty, the sister. Okay, which structurally that song was off because that should have been the hook. That was the catchiest part and the waviest part of it. So I have What Would Pluto Do? I have Daylight. I have First Person Shooter, 8 a.m. in Charlotte, BBL Love Interlude, maybe Away From Home. I would say, like, honestly, for now, 5 to 6 tracks that I could really see myself bumping, which for a Drake album, that's like record-breaking numbers in terms of like how that ratio is divided.
Yeah,
man. It's
I also
really crazy.
I want to talk about Jua Picasso. I do feel like that's maybe one of the stronger R&B cuts off of the album. That's maybe something that I'm going to be going back to. How do you feel about What Would Pluto Do? That was initially the whole like snippet.
I just spoke about it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was just saying how I feel like structurally it could have been better.
I feel like for myself, the problem that I had with it was maybe the mixing and mastering on the vocals on the third verse. I know it's maybe a bit of a nitpick, but like Drake's vocals are so drowned into that production that sometimes it was like hard for me to hear what was going on, at least in my headphones. I'm not sure if that was the case for you guys. But for the most part, a lot of weird curation choices, I will say that. And did we speak about Another Late Night with Yachty?
No, we didn't speak about it. But I mean, not too much to say. It was a song that feels like it should have belonged on Lil Boat 2, not on a new Drake album.
That's it. I feel like Drake had a good first verse. Shawty ran some Dillian Brooks, so I'm not sure about how that goes with it. But yeah, for the most part, the Yachty verse wasn't too impressive. But listen, guys, we're massive Drake fans. You guys know how much we support his music, so let us know in the comments section. Where do we get it right? Where do we get it wrong? And how do you feel about the For All the Dogs album experience? And guys, as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, our live album reaction to For All the Dogs is now uploaded onto the Patreon plan. You guys could go access that. It was an incredible time with the entire community, and it was interesting doing a live album reaction at 6 a.m. in the morning. So guys, much love to everyone that stuck around with us throughout this entire rollout.
Album review coming soon, guys.
Yes, it's going to be coming on Monday, so expect that soon. We have new audio podcasts coming. We have some cool new series coming through as well. So that's going to be all decided for next week. And guys, if there's another Drake album on the horizon sometime soon, you better believe NFR Podcast is going to be covering it. Much love to you guys, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.